It's over, Paul.
Yeah.
Calling it now. It's done.
You
Finito.
talking about the Bengals upcoming season? What are we doing? I can't help being a guy. I just go right for the groin
God,
for some reason. I know it was unfair. I don't even know why I did it. I sometimes it comes out of my mouth and I wonder.
That's the
And
one that
yet
hurts.
I feel pretty good about it.
Jesus.
Anyway, I'm sorry. What were you referring to?
Now I gotta recompose myself. Oh my God. I was about to say, before you wrecked my entire day,
Yep. Sorry.
that Apple's doomed.
Wow. See,
Yep.
I was gonna say okay, but why? Okay, why do you say that?
iPhone sales in China fell 19.1% year over year.
Yeah. Um.
This might be
Okay.
a quarter of reckoning for a lot of companies. And I don't just mean Apple, right? There's a potential. Now, I'm going to say all this, but then it's like Netflix just had blockbuster, whatever subscription revenue, Spotify as well. But I think
Yeah.
there's some companies who have prospered through some of the past few years that are going to find challenge.
Yeah. So there are uh, artificial gains and losses
Mm-hmm.
tagged around the pandemic, right? We're
Yep.
always that thing is like Michael Myers and Halloween. He's always going to raise
Well,
its head in the middle of the
I
night.
would qualify that statement you just said
Yeah.
around the pandemic and really low interest rates. And I mean like really low interest rates.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
the reason why I say that is things that are big purchases now become much more expensive, and that potentially starts with phones if there's interest rates attached to them.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't right now,
I
by
mean,
the
I guess
way,
you could
right?
depend on how you pay, but yeah,
There
yes, go
it's
ahead.
zero. I mean, if you want to spread out an iPhone payment with however, with an Apple card or whatever it is, it's like 0%. So, I mean,
Yeah, sure.
but you're right. I mean, like cars and houses
Yeah,
and I don't know, maybe Vision Pro. I
yeah,
don't know. But here's the thing that's semi unique to Apple, and they like every device maker is highly reliant on China.
mm-hmm.
People have called for them to diversify where they manufacture these devices, and Apple has responded. They're in India, they're looking at Vietnam, they're all over the place, right? People have wondered, why does this take so long? It seems like just fire this stuff up and get going, right? But I think this China thing shows the underbelly of this, the problem with this, which is Apple's iPhone problems in China are not caused by consumers that don't want Apple devices. They're caused by a state mandated order that you will not buy non-Chinese devices.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing this in other kind of totalitarian type countries like Russia, where they want everything to be in-house. So the software systems, the services, the hardware, down to the chipset level, right? The Huawei is making their own stuff on all those levels now because of sanctions from the US. That's how these things backfire, right? So if you're Tim Cook and you're looking at this, the reason they've moved so slowly, I think, to get out of China, aside from the practical
Mm-hmm.
reality of that, is that for this reason, like they're trying to appease two different
Yeah,
masters here.
yep,
People always wonder, like, why does Microsoft or Google or Apple or whatever do business with China? Like, just leave that market. It is the biggest market in the world by
mm-hmm.
any measure. Consumers, just overall revenue, however you want to look at it, size. You can't just, it's not that simple.
Right.
And this is what happens. I mean, this is how do you, like, what's the balance? Like, what's the right? We move X% of manufacturing out of China. We're moving slowly. And they're like, no one can buy iPhones in this country anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
like, that big chunk of your revenue stream just disappeared overnight.
Yep.
So it's tricky. Everything in life is nuanced. This is the thing. Like, people love to see the world black and white. If everything was so simple, how nice would that be?
Mm-hmm.
But it's complicated, and I think that's what we're seeing there. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, I
Obviously, I
mean, I
mean,
don't
like on
either.
some
It's
ethical level, it's like, yeah, get out of China. Let's pretend this place
geopolitics at its
doesn't.
best, right?
Yeah, just pretend it doesn't exist. Except, you know what? It does exist, and they're stealing our technology, and they're going to come in with this stuff. And Huawei is talking about expanding their stuff worldwide now. And I mean, it's like a science fiction movie, like a Blade Runner thing, where all the billboards are for this Huawei OS no one here has ever even heard of, running on Huawei chips that were ripped off from, ARM and Qualcomm or whatever, and no one's ever heard of them either, running on their hardware. And it's all English as a second language stuff, and that's what we're left with. You know what I mean? Like this is not an impossible future. It's anyway, it's a big story, obviously. So it's kind of complicated.
And another move that I actually think this one's really smart of the company, Meta is opening up their Horizon OS, as they now call it, or whatever, for VR stuff,
Right.
to basically anybody. Probably anybody other than Apple Vision Pro, but yeah,
Right.
Microsoft's on board. And a couple others are jumping in.
Yeah. Aside from the fact that I don't think there's a big future for this type of thing.
Well, I think that's sort of it, right? I think the way Meta looks at least the way my brain took this, is it's going to be like it's not the same volume. I'm going to qualify that first, but it's there's the Apple, and then there's the everybody else, and Meta
So
wants to be the everybody,
everyone else for this. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there are pros and cons here. If you would looked at the computing world in 2000, 2005, it would have been very clear the Microsoft model of partnering worked and won, right? You look at it today, and you see that the platform makers like Microsoft and Google who are partnering otherwise, are also making their own devices, because they look at this vertical thing Apple created and they're like, we want a part of that pie. And these things are in fact mutually exclusive. It's a problem. It's a problem for both those companies. So Meta's doing it from the opposite end. Like, they started out like Apple. We make our own devices, make our own systems. We do our own thing. We're our own platform, whatever. They reached whatever level of success.
So I think we'll put success in quotes.
That's what I meant. Whatever level of. Those are my quotes. But unfortunately, you're going to have to succumb to the dark side of this partnering problem, which is we see this in the PC world with like crapware. We see it in the phone world with Samsung that puts duplicates every single app and service that Google makes for some reason. This is what happens. So it's a small enough market they could lock it down, like Nintendo started the model for in the video game industry that everyone still follows today, where you charge fees and something, except they're not, right? It's open source. They're doing the Chromium model, and this it's like I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It's interesting. It's newsworthy. They got their 15 seconds of fame there, but now it's Tuesday and we're moving on. So I don't,
Well, I just imagine that Lenovo went into the back room and put out some of those Windows mixed reality headsets and just went.
There are companies, exactly, HP, Lenovo, and to some degree Samsung too, by the way, that have followed Microsoft in that case down some rabbit holes. And God, you could make there's a fascinating story of something awesome happened and we try to copy it. You could make a book out of this. I'll cite two HP examples that come immediately to my mind for some reason. Faced with the rise of the iPod in the early 2000s, I guess, Carly Fiorina at HP announced, remember, it was going to be like a light blue iPod, and it was going to have the HP logo on it and everything. And that thing created 2 seconds flat, completely incompatible with everything that was happening on the non-iPod side of the fence. And then the other one was, and people probably forget this because these things are so flash in the pan, but stung by the immediate success of the iPad, Microsoft had to respond in some way. And they didn't have anything ready themselves. Obviously, they were never going to make their own device. So Steve Ballmer came out, I think it was at a partner conference, probably, holding up like an HP slate saying, look, we got one too. Yeah, no, you don't. This is just, these are companies that have so much money, they can just throw shit at the wall and see if anything sticks. It's crazy, Yep,
it's worth taking the shot, because what if it does?
I mean, I'm writing a story this morning. It's actually, I was going to just write a little news story about it, but then I saw how this unfolded, and I'm like, no, there's an editorial here, and the editorial is Microsoft announced an in-house SLM, I'm going to call it, a non-device Phi 3 mini whatever family of models that run on phones. Microsoft doesn't have phones. And so obviously the idea here is that the app makers, well, I guess, will adopt this, perhaps, assuming Apple lets them, and run it on like an iPhone, like because they have MPUs and so forth, or a Google phone or whatever it is. That's great. That's fine.
Mhm.
Here's the thing. Nobody gives a shit. And every single day, a new language model is announced by any number of companies, open source or otherwise. It would get lost in the mix. The way Microsoft promoted it publicly was via an academic white paper that no one's going to read, that no one will understand, that makes the same exact claims that Meta makes, that Google Gemma, whatever it's called, that all these things make, Mistral, whatever it is. And so behind the scenes, what they did, because you can see it, if you go to like, was it Tech Meme or whatever, they reached out to every publication on earth. And for the big publications, like in our space, like The Verge, but in the mainstream world, like Reuters and New York Times, they gave them people to talk to explain why this is important. The New York Times wrote up an article. You would have thought this was like the second coming of something important, when in fact, it's just another SLM, and there'll be more tomorrow and next week and blah, 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 whatever. But the world is changing, and it's changing really fast. And that's what AI does. And Microsoft doesn't want to get lost in the mix. So they put some PR muscle behind it, which is something the little guys can't really do to that degree.
Right.
Fascinating. We live in interesting times, and that is not a good thing.
We live in crazy times. I mean, this is.
Yep.
It's quantum computing is not quite accurate, but it's
like
in that era, right? Like it's in the.
I can't. I don't want to give away something.
Yep.
Yeah. Quantum computing. This is like that will be the. This will come out of nowhere. Like next year, June or something, right? There'll be some quantum computing. Oh my God, we did it! And I'm telling you, dude, put down the computer and go out to the woods and just leave, because it's over.
Just go to.
I mean, it's over.
Yeah.
It is over. When we have computer systems that can break encryption in 2 seconds and can solve all these problems in less than 2 seconds, I mean, it's over. It's just over.
I mean, it really is, because at that
it's
point,
going to make the stuff we have now look like 2 kids playing in the dirt with sticks.
Assuming what they can get there.
Did you ever think we were going to get to where we are now with AI like this?
Dude,
this
I'm
quickly?
lucky I got out of bed this morning. I mean, so, let's put things into perspective. That whenever
I can't even. Look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I mean, this is probably no surprise. I just have a hard time even conceptualizing most of this stuff. I tell this joke a lot, but like when Microsoft had some quantum computing advance several years ago, I guess now. And I thought we were going to just be dealing with quantum computing every year for the rest of our lives, but they never talked about it again. Thank God.
Well,
they did.
Which, by the way, we know why they never talked about it again.
Well, it wasn't real, but
because it didn't work. It was wrong.
I didn't do it. Yeah. No, I know, but you talk to these geniuses that know how this stuff works, and they're on stage first, and I'm like, I don't know it didn't make any sense. And they offered me the chance to talk to the guys that had been on stage, whoever they were at Microsoft Research, probably. Sat in a room with these guys for 45 minutes, nodded my head a lot, took notes, asked questions. They came up with what they thought were plain English explanations of what they were trying to say. It's kind of like when Stephen Hawking wrote that book and then had to rewrite it to make it easier to understand, and it was still way over my head. So I sat down and I wrote an article that said the title was going to be "Everything You Need to Know About Quantum Computing." And the first sentence was, "Is an article I wish I could write." And it's beyond me, just beyond. I mean, that particular topic is beyond most people, I guess. It's hard.
Just like the Bengals. Which you
At least the Bengals defense.